He be talking. Oh, okay.
I got both recording, so damn, I'm getting good at this, dog.
Just come on. Let's go. We got a lot of people. Come on. We want to get it back on schedule.
Okay.
Cheers. Good job.
Good job.
Notice my boots. That's Dallas boots. They're
Nice.
leather boots. Okay. Welcome to another exciting Can you smile?
I was just waiting because okay, come on, let's go.
Remember, we had no music.
2, 3. Yeah, music will come in when you see it, though. It'll have the whole intro. 1,
All right.
2, 3. Okay, go.
One, do it again. You got some on your teeth.
Spinach.
Yeah. Okay.
Where's that?
Suck harder.
Oh my God. He said suck harder. I just ate and all.
No, ain't that. All right,
Is it
it's out.
really?
It's gone now.
Is it there? Don't we have
No,
enough?
it's gone. It's gone now. Yeah, it's gone. Okay, we're ready.
Girl, we just have
Okay, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show with my co-host, the one, the only Yolanda M. Smith, the philanthropist.
Oh, Hey, what's up, Dre?
What's up? What's up?
Audience, we are so excited to be with you today. It is a good day. It's always a good day. When you wake up, it is a good day. But our goal is to bring you entertainment, education, and informative information. Okay, so there can be information that's not informative, is what you're saying.
And we'll talk about that later, but that is true.
That is true. Sometimes you can put trash in your head and you don't want to do that. But we got an exciting show today.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
We've been trying to talk about this one particular subject, and a lot of people think that it might not exist, but we have some individuals going to tell a story and blah, blah, blah. Let's do it again. Cut.
No, keep going. Why'd you do that? Come on, Dre. Okay, we got to start all over. This is it. If we were live, you cannot stop.
I know, but we're not live right now. All right. So you take it. You take the spin to bring her
to bring Katie in. Okay. All right.
Okay. All right. Ready?
Yep.
Smile. Welcome to another. Need a drink. Welcome to another exciting episode of the. No, that's not what we supposed to say.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show. Yeah, okay. I'm your host, Andre Crayton. And come on, man.
This is the blooper.
Yeah, and we use them too. Watch.
Okay. 1, 2. Give me do like 1, 2, 3.
But somebody can see.
Oh, yeah, they can see you. Don't do it then.
Come on.
Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show. I'm your host, Andre the Beast Crayton, and my beautiful co-host, the one, the only Yolanda M. Smith, the philanthropist.
It took seasons for him to say that right. I am so proud.
2 seasons.
I am so proud of you. I'm proud of you.
I do my homework.
You know what? You do, but that don't mean you say your homework right, but we got it now. The philanthropist, absolutely. It's a pleasure to be with you today. We are so excited because you know what? Every day you wake up is a good day, and there's nothing better than just having a show and hanging out with us. So if you're watching now, please like, subscribe, comment. We would love for you to become a part of our community because today's show, put your bootstraps on.
Look. I got them on.
You got your boots on. I think there's some red on that bottom. Is there some red?
These aren't the red bottoms today. These are,
they got red bottoms.
Yeah.
Okay, they got red bottoms.
Yeah, they got red bottoms.
They fake red bottoms?
No.
Oh, okay.
I don't. That would be a lot of paint for these shoes.
A lot of paint.
A lot of paint.
So today we're going to be talking about a topic that, has been in the news for several years now. When you kind of think about mistreatment of people, police brutality, just to put it blankly, a lot of times we just get bullied. There's a lot of things that happen. There's the violence, there's the hate crimes. There's so much right now going on. But we have a special guest with us today. Her name is Katie Murphy,
Awesome
and
lady.
she has an amazing story.
Truly amazing.
Yes. And so we're going to be so excited to engage and talk with her. And then as we kind of talk about this subject, hopefully we can get to some recommendations in a place where we think there's some things that we can do to start to make the world a better place. Welcome to the show, Katie.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is I would love to just start a little bit with your story. If we could just tell the audience a little bit about you and then about what you experienced and why you want to share your story today.
Absolutely. So I grew up in Ohio and I put myself through college. So Midwest.
Yeah.
I got degrees in accounting and information systems design, and I was working for Fortune 100 companies, Humana, Kaiser, contracting at Microsoft, et cetera. And all along, I had this feeling that I wasn't really following my purpose. And toward the end of my employment with Kaiser, one of my colleagues messaged me and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm getting ready to walk away from Omelas," which is a reference to a story by Ursula Le Guin that was written in 1973 called The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas. And it's about a utopia that exists based upon the suffering of a single child. And so the ones who walk away are the ones who were not willing to accept the harm to another for their pleasure. So I bought a camper and, had prepared to leave my very luxurious life living on Mercer Island outside of Seattle, which is a very upscale area. And during the lockdowns, I was in a natural food store on Mercer Island and noticing that no one was looking at each other. And realizing, because of my study of psychology, that this was going to have a really serious detrimental impact. And I asked a friend of mine if we could start a gathering at his place. And so on Friday nights, we started gathering people, and they became a support network for each other to the point where there were thousands of people networked together.
So how did you find these people? Okay, so how did you reach out to these people?
It was through word of mouth. The first time that we met, it was just a couple of friends. And then by word of mouth, it spread until 2 months later, there were 50 people. And those people had connections to other groups. So all the groups became interconnected.
Wow.
So, there was a whole international network of people who were supporting each other through this. And, well, to me, it was just, okay, provide some encouragement. Toward the end of my participation with that group, several people told me that they would not have survived without the group, that they would have killed themselves during that time.
And so this was during COVID, or is that what we're talking about? Kind of doing it in the COVID period. Okay. Just want the audience to be clear what so that was through COVID. Okay.
Yeah. So one of the members of the group had incidents with some of the women in the group where there was non-consensual contact. And I'd heard from both sides on this. It had been going on for some time. And then when it happened to me, I spoke up about it. And half the group, was supportive, and half the group was really furious with me for having spoken up. And so everyone.
Why were they furious?
What are we talking about when we say non-consensual contact? Just so people understand, it doesn't have to be intercourse, but what does that mean?
Well, what happened to me would have met the legal definition of rape. And some of the individuals in the group felt that I was speaking up to cause harm to the individual who had done this to me. And they said that if I had really experienced that I would have contacted the police. But from prior times that I had contacted the police, their response caused more harm than good. There was a boyfriend who had threatened me, and when I called the police, they arrested him and would not drop the charges, and it caused him years of PTSD. And there was nothing done that had any positive impact on that. And so realizing that reaching out to the police was not going to help the situation, I didn't want to take that course. And so I only spoke up to people who I knew. And, even though it was not ideal and it was harmful to me to go that route, the respect of the group and his desire to remain a member of that group was the pressure that was needed in order to correct that situation. He doesn't want that view of him. And so now he can no longer do those things. And, being the person in the group to have that experience, it wasn't going to simply go away without someone speaking up.
Okay.
So what was the whole purpose of the group outside of you guys trying to have, I guess, a way of communication during the pandemic? Am I understanding that correctly? Just
Right.
a way to socially talk with one another, and then this communication evolved into something that was forced upon you. Things were forced on you individuals to do. Am I correct?
Right. I mean, it was just one individual who wasn't understanding the impact of his actions.
Mhm.
And because it was such an open, close-knit group, it provided a situation where there was a lot of trust.
So that means, did you guys have alcohol present and things of that nature? I mean, no alcohol. So he was just being who he was, flirty, thought he could just touch or kiss or do certain things without the permission of the person because he was a
Right.
part of the group. Yeah. So he just took a little bit of, sounds like entitlement to me,
Right.
to help himself.
But more importantly,
mean-
she mentioned that part of the groups didn't want her to come forward with this. Why do you think that was? Did he have this much influence over these other individuals? Were there just men? Were there women? Were there both parties involved, men and women? You know what I mean?
Who were
Yeah.
angry about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, both men and women were angry about
Yeah.
it. From the men who actually spoke to me, it triggered their fears of being accused. That there was a misunderstanding, about boundaries. And so, they were afraid that they would be accused and have, horrible consequences for themselves. And with the women, it really was about an inability to communicate and to understand. So, it really came from all sides. It was about half and half, the group.
Okay.
So once you took the initiative to go to the authorities, you said
She didn't go to the authority because she said based on her prior experience, it was not
Okay.
positive.
I just wanted to make sure I was clear.
Yeah, no, it
Yeah.
wasn't positive. And so
Okay.
which is what happens in a lot of cases, but okay,
Right.
so okay, you can keep going. I'm sorry.
So, part of the reason was that this individual really did a lot of good. This is isolated acts, even though it was repeated, most of his time was spent helping others.
Mhm.
He was really attentive to the needs of others. He gave gifts and did service for others all the time. He was one of the most active, kind, caring members. He just
So
simply
they were trying to protect his reputation. That's what that
Right.
was. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't want to, push it because, the end goal is, to allow him to understand another perspective, but not to stop him from doing the acts of service and the kind deeds that he was doing all the time.
So did you directly communicate that to him before you went to the group?
I did. I tried to speak with him about it multiple times, and each time he would scream at me. And, the last time that I tried, he was yelling at me until my body started shaking. And I was like, oh, I tend to be pretty fearless, but now my body is telling me that I'm actually in danger. And so after I wasn't able to communicate directly with him about it, I had to decide, am I going to stay silent and allow this happen to the next person or speak up? I don't want to speak up about it, obviously, but because it had been repeating, I felt that it was more important for me to speak up. But then, to remove myself from the division that happened in the group over that, I actually left. I had already bought a camper. I was already, thinking about leaving Mercer Island and my cushy lifestyle. Anyway, so I went out to the Olympic Peninsula and spent about a month out there deciding what I was going to do. And I felt called to go to Sedona, Arizona.
I used to have a condo there.
Really?
Yeah,
Yes, so you're familiar
Los
with it.
Obrigados. It was a timeshare, I should say, a timeshare condo. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's a beautiful place.
Yeah, I thought it was really strange feeling called to go there until I got there and found that a lot of people were called to go there,
Mhm.
and learned about the physical characteristics that makes it a place of healing. So a guy
Mhm.
named Pete Sanders has written multiple books about the physics behind
Mhm.
why the Native Americans used it as a place of healing, and no one lived there. They only came to get the healing and then they would leave. And so a lot of people who are there tend to be transient.
Mhm.
So, someone who has suffered trauma like me, isn't moving there because they want to make a home there, but going there to get the healing of being in that place.
Mhm.
And it was really an amazing experience. Just walk into the grocery store, Natural Grocers, and get 50 hugs. Everyone's so kind and welcoming, and there's such a great feeling of being in the natural environment that has this healing power, and then around all of these people who are resonating with that power and showing love to one another. But when I was there, mothers started to approach me and tell me about the challenges they were facing. Some of them were those transients living in, campers or camping out on the public lands, et cetera, but they were in fear and didn't have what they needed. So I was doing what I could to help. I was staying in a house and, would invite them in to take a shower, do laundry, cook some food, et cetera, share what I had. But then also recognize that everything that they needed was actually available in the community. And the barrier was that they didn't know the individuals within the community. So I started another group, and I Someday
You're the
Sunday.
connector. This is what we call the
Right.
connector.
Well, what were some of the things that they did not have that they needed that
Um,
that you said
Access,
was there and they
right.
just didn't know how to get it? So what was those things that they wasn't obtaining?
Access to basic things, showers, food, being able to do laundry. And they were also in fear because the police and the Bureau of Land Management would just make sweeps, come in like stormtroopers with drones and, weapons, and move people off the land. And, so they were in fear.
Moving them off
And
the land for what? What was the purpose of
Because they didn't live
eradicating it?
there. I'm assuming they didn't just
I mean, was it minerals? Was it some valuable on the land that they didn't want them there?
No, there's a lot of land that's under the Bureau of Land Management, which makes it public land. So a lot of times they're out away, where people cannot see them in the forest, the desert, et cetera. But some of them were in closer where people are complaining about the homelessness. I mean, these homeless sweeps take place almost anywhere that there's a significant number of homeless people. So
right.
it wasn't unique to that area.
So people were being led there, but they were coming without resources to really sustain themselves. Is that what I'm hearing? So by
Yes.
all terminology, they would have been considered homeless.
Yes.
Okay, so that's a difference. So then that would have taken on a different stigma versus someone like you having resources and deciding to move there and not really sure why you're there, but you're there, but you can take care of yourself. I see.
I was chased off the first place that I went because I had brand new camper. I, made contact with a guy who had land there, so I put my camper on his land. But um, the local authorities didn't want any camps building up, and so there were, I think it was 5 adults and 2 children at his land. And one of the neighbors complained to the county, and the county threatened him. And so we all had to leave. And that's when I went to stay in a house that
Mhm.
was leased by a friend of mine.
So they didn't have what we would call authorized campgrounds where you could go to?
They were full, they were pretty expensive, and out of reach for a lot of people. Because even
Gotcha.
just a place to put my camper would have been a minimum of $800 a month.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if
So
you had to pay rent, I mean, I'm just trying to think of it from, if I looked at paying rent out there out west, which is super expensive, then
it
that
is.
would have almost been a bargain.
Right.
right? I mean, in some cases.
Yeah. So I started a group in order to start connecting members of the community so that they would know, for example, where is housing available,
Mhm.
and just connecting people, because I don't know if you've ever read the book Stone Soup, but it's about how when we come together, we really have everything that we need. And so it's a matter of making those connections in order to find how we all fit together and help one another. So we started having these gatherings. We had free yoga, breath work courses. We brought food to share. People were bringing clothing and other items to share with each other. And so it was a really wonderful connection that was developing. But what I was finding is that I still had trauma from the last group and from being assaulted in that. And so even though I was attending and interacting with people, I was experiencing fear in those interactions. And so I really wanted to get over that fear. And so I looked at information about treatments for PTSD.
Mhm.
And one of the effective treatments that had been found to work for veterans and had been explored in universities was the use of psilocybin. So I got a dose of psilocybin and set the intention of addressing my fears, and chose the full moon as the time that I wanted to do this, because the connection with nature, it's the set and setting.
Okay, so you got to go back because I don't even know what psilocybin. Okay.
Is psilocybin LSD?
No, it's mushrooms. So it's a
Mushrooms?
naturally occurring substance that's been used, for thousands of years in natural remedies, and is being legalized in a lot of jurisdictions because it's been found to be the only effective solution for some patients who have treatment-resistant depression or PTSD.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that was a
Yeah.
good.
Did,
Thank
did you do your research on this particular mushroom before undergoing it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, this is getting good. Okay, so then you chose.
I had been in groups that explored this for years. So when I was in Seattle, I would go to groups that explored this not only from the personal level, but there were psychiatrists, biologists, et cetera, in these groups. And, they explained the proper use, the circumstances for it, et cetera. So
Okay.
I had a lot of information on it prior to choosing this as a therapy. So I wanted to do it in nature because that is one of the circumstances that make the therapy more effective.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to keep doing this. So, it's like one and done. And so set the intention and had a very intentional means of going about the setting, choosing the exact date, I wanted to camp out so I would maximize my connection with nature during this time. And I was very well prepared since it was February. It was cold. And so I bundled up in layers of merino wool and cashmere, and had my wool socks and my shearling boots and my down parka and, blankets, etc. And so I went and I did the dose and my meditation. And when it was all over, I laid down to sleep, and I just kept getting colder and colder because it turned out to be one of the coldest nights of the year. And so I reached the point where I just couldn't take it anymore, but I had gotten separated from my boots in the dark. And I was like, well, I've got the wool socks, so I think I can make it home, because it was approximately a mile to walk back to the house. So I started walking, but then hypothermia started setting in. So I ended up where, different, bodily functions are shutting down, and I couldn't walk anymore. So I stopped at the house that was there, and I knocked on the doors and windows and no one answered. And then I noticed that there was a TV on in the guest house behind the house. So I went back there and I knocked on the door and there was no answer, but the TV was on and I could see the two big dogs sitting on the sofa. And I tried the door and it was unlocked. So I went in and I asked the man, can you please help me? I can't make it any further. I'm really close to home. I just need a little help to get there. So the house that I stayed in was actually the adjoining property. It was behind this house. So the only thing between me and home was his big fence. And he said that he didn't want to leave his property because it's late at night and he would call the police to help me. So I went back outside to wait, but I was too cold. So I went to, find him to let him know, I can't stay out here. I'm almost frozen to death already. And he had disappeared. So I just sat down. His big dogs cuddle up with me. And then a while later, the police arrive and they're shouting, they have their guns drawn. And they said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm waiting for you." And so they take me back outside and, ask me my name and some other information. And they tell me that I'm under arrest, which is completely baffling to me. I'm asking them, can you just get me home? It's right there. I can give you directions. And they asked me the address and I couldn't think of it. So when I did research on hypothermia later, I found that it interferes with, speech and thought, et cetera, because
Right.
all of blood has gone to the vital organs to prevent death. And so, I'm like, all right, well, this will get sorted out. So, I keep asking them, will you please just take me home? I just need to go home. And so I go through the whole, really degrading, horrible process of being treated like I'm, a serial killer and, strip searched, all that, and put into a jail cell. And they refuse to give me a blanket. So I'm on this cold concrete trying to recover from hypothermia. They've taken my warm clothes and now I'm in some prison rags. And I keep asking over and over for a blanket. And everything that they asked me to do, fill out this paper, have the nurse check your vitals, et cetera. Every time they've asked me to do something, they say, as soon as you do that, we'll give you a blanket. And so after hours of laying on this cold concrete floor, I finally say, look, you guys are not doing what you said. I will do what you ask as soon as you give me a blanket. And the guard grabs me, yanks me up from the floor, slams me against the wall, cuffs my hands. Two of them drag me out of the cell, throw me on the ground out in the common area. And then a half a dozen guards pile on top of me, hog tie me.
Oh my God. Are you even resisting at this point? You're
No,
handcuffed.
But
Not at all.
more importantly,
Just for a blanket?
but more importantly, let's go back for a minute because I'm listening to this story. Were you under the influence of the mushrooms before the hypothermia took place?
the mushrooms had worn off because it takes, a maximum of 5 hours, and it had been between 5 and 6 hours.
Were you
So-
supervised during this time of taking the mushrooms? Because to me, if I'm taking something that's going to cause this, I should have been supervised. Were you not supervised during this time?
No.
She was by herself
So
in
you,
the
you,
woods.
you took it by yourself, unsupervised.
Yeah.
And then I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding. So now the police intervene and come. You go into this guy's house. You're in hypothermia, which does mess with your memory and so forth. But now he calls the police. So what is the police arresting you for? Public intoxication?
Trespassing? I don't know.
Trespassing?
Yeah, trespassing.
Right.
Yeah.
Even though the guy let you in his house and called the police, he turned around and said you was trespassing.
Well,
I found out later. So I got the 911 calls and the video from the police, in order to figure out like what in the world happened here.
Right.
So after he disappeared and I could not find him, he went inside and told his wife, and they got into basically a state of hysteria where she grabs their children out of their beds and runs into a closet with a gun. And the guy is on the phone with the police telling them that he's going to shoot me. Well, on the phone with the 911 operator telling him that he's going to shoot me. But at the same time on the call, he's saying that I was not aggressive at all, that it was either 4 or 5 guard dogs and none of them are barking, so logically he knows that there's no threat and that's what he's describing. But, it triggered some sort of fear in him, and my best guess is that it's a prior trauma. So, they're in a state of hysteria. And then when the police arrive, they're asking
they're figuring out where you come from, why are you here, what are you doing, all that sort of
well,
stuff.
the dialogue that happens on the video, they're trying to look for a reason to arrest me. So they start questioning him. Did you ask her to leave? And he says, well, I told her it's the wrong house. And then they're interviewing his wife, and they determine that nothing I did caused her hysteria. So they say that there's, nothing that they can do with that. And then they ask him, are you willing to, be the plaintiff for us to arrest her? And, because I had said that I took mushrooms earlier in the day, they tell him, well, she took drugs. And so, convincing this guy that I'm a dangerous criminal and that he should file a complaint against me. So,
Wow.
Well, I mean, they had to have a reason.
Well, yeah, but the bottom line is she was just asking for help. Get me home. I live over the fence, for God's sake.
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
These guys, I'm telling you, I'm so over it.
So
Okay.
let's move forward.
So she's in the jail
You're in the
cell.
jail cell now,
Yeah.
and they are legally hog tying you.
Right.
Explain that.
So they've tied, they've got my arms cuffed. They pull my legs up. They, tie those. And I'm screaming from pain because they're pulling so hard on my limbs that they're tearing, the connective tissue and the muscles. And, they're all screaming at me. They haul me off to another jail cell. They throw me in the jail cell, push my head underneath the concrete bunker, and then they're pulling on my limbs again. I don't even know what they want. And I'm screaming in pain and asking them to stop. I'm never resisting. And there's a half dozen of them piled on top of me. I'm about 110 pounds.
Wow.
And, I mean, we've seen these things in police videos.
Are there any female guards, officers
There
involved
are.
in this?
There are.
And none
Yes.
of them said, hey, this isn't right. This
No.
isn't right. Nobody stood up and said, this isn't right. We need to stop.
No. So they start yelling that they're going to tase me if
For
I move.
what? Because you're yelling because they're hurting you and your ligaments are torn at this point.
They say if you move before we get the jail cell closed, then we're going to tase you. And they finally leave. So I'm just sobbing and I crawl underneath the concrete bunk, because it's the only thing that I can see as a barrier between me and, more attack. And, eventually I calm down a little and I get up and I get the pad off. It's like a plastic pad from the bunk, and I put it underneath and get back under the bunk.
Mhm.
And there's still no blanket. And then one of the guards comes in and he yanks the pad out from under me, which slams my head into the concrete. Never asks for anything. I have no idea why he did that. And then, I had
Assholes.
I had declined to do the fingerprints in the photograph. And so they're, badgering me to do that. And I'm telling them no. And so they bring in a laptop to do an arraignment, which is the first time that Miranda rights are read. And, I'm told that I'll be talking to a lawyer, but that never happens. And
Did they read you
He said, she
Amanda
said
Rice
no.
when they
No.
first said they're going to arrest you? You have the right to remain silent.
No.
Wow.
yeah.
So did you request an attorney? I mean, because at this point you need to, where's your right to the first phone call or the
Yeah.
attorney or something like
Yeah.
that?
That only happens on TV.
Oh, shit.
Right.
You don't get it right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
That only
was
happens on TV.
right. This is a very educational experience because all of the things that I thought happened in our legal system were not happening. And, so since then, through my research, I've found out that most of the rights we think we have actually been suspended through case law. So our rights under the Constitution are suspended. There's no right to a trial by jury. Just so many of the things that I believed about our justice system are not true. And in the state of Arizona, the NAACP recently filed a lawsuit about these violations of constitutional rights, and the lawsuit was just thrown out. But
It makes you wonder what rights you really have
Well, that's
under
the
the
point.
Constitution.
If you don't know, then you think in one thing and it seems like it's another thing. Okay, so in the interest of time, we gotta be careful with time, but I'm curious. So you get on the arraignment, then what happens?
I'm still kept in the cell. There's no lawyer. When I finally got the phone call, I am surrounded by, between 6 and 10 police as they take me there, and they're all angry. And they actually slammed down the receiver and cut off my call. Because
What were they angry about?
Because she wouldn't do the fingerprints and the stuff they were asking her to do. I'm suspecting, is that
why they was angry? Because you refused to give your fingerprints?
I don't know, because they were angry before that. It just
Oh.
seemed to be the default state.
So they were probably angry because they heard from everybody's story but yours.
Right.
That's probably when
Or
this
they
officer
just
said
made
this.
some assumptions that you were maybe homeless or something. Just
They already had a
wandering
personal bandana
around.
because they didn't like the homeless out there.
Yeah,
Well, it can be
could have been a
any reason.
stereotype.
I've looked at the Tyre Nichols case, and they said, oh, he swerved and then he's beaten to death. It's a default state that the police are in where there's an enemy and their job is to go out and fight this enemy. So no matter who it is that you put in front of them, that's the enemy.
That's the enemy. And you became the enemy that day.
Right.
Oh my God. So what happened after?
When did you get the lawyer? When did the lawyer come in?
I didn't. I never got a lawyer.
Then how did you get out?
My friends paid the bail. And so when I was in the cell, I'd been in the cell for more than a day. They didn't release me because they were saying they would not release me until they got the photo and the fingerprints. And so a sergeant came in and he told me that if I didn't give it, they were going to use any means necessary to get it, which, having watched the police kill people, I'm like, okay, that's any means necessary. And so, during the 20 minutes, I was like, well, is adding one more body to the body count going to help? Would that protect someone else? Because if so, at that point, I was fine with it, because I don't really want to live in a world where this is acceptable, that people get beat up for no reason.
Oh my God.
And then I thought, well, the moms and other people that I've been trying to help, it's really going to scare them if I am added to the body count. So I finally agreed to do the fingerprints and the photograph. And then I was released.
You didn't appear in front of a judge for a bond hearing?
That was done when they brought a laptop into the cell.
And you appeared in front of a judge by laptop, by video?
Yeah, video.
By video. What was your charge? What was your charges? The judge had to read off your charges.
Right. So I was charged with trespassing and disorderly conduct, which, since then I've spoken to an attorney and he said that the disorderly conduct is not supported by any evidence, and that the trespassing is questionable because I only trespassed in an emergency and he never asked me to leave. He offered assistance, but, he said that this prosecutor doesn't ever drop charges or do any type of mediation. So
are you still fighting this case currently?
Yes.
I was going to ask you, when did this take place? So this was recently or no?
It was February of 2022. February.
You're
16th.
kidding me.
Right.
That recent.
But is it a misdemeanor? That's a misdemeanor.
Right. But even a misdemeanor interferes with certain rights.
Right. Yeah. So and that's what people don't know.
Right.
Because I don't know if you're aware of it or not, but so this is what's interesting to me. I don't mean to digress, but we're going to digress for 1 second. So unless, even when you think about the political system, so if charges get dropped, he can run for that man can run for president again. I'm not going to say his name, but he can run for president again.
Yeah.
But if you get convicted of a felony, you don't have the right to vote. There's so many things you can't do. Nobody will insure you for years because they see you as a high risk. I mean, there are so many things that think about trying to secure viable employment, regardless to whether they say they'll help you or not. They hold it against you because there's a stereotype around it that you're this awful person or whatever. And it could be very just not even your fault. It could be someone else's fault. But the fact that you got hemmed up and pinned like this, it could, I mean, and you probably, I'm sure you've done your research, so you even know more than that. But I just know that from just having some people that have been into the system. And I also know that in particular cases, it's super easy to get into the system, but it's hell to get out.
It's hell to get out.
They want to keep you there at all costs. And some of that is just cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. They wrap up charges for this. It's a charge for this. You got to pay for this. You're on probation. You got to pay for this. They put you on a home monitoring monitoring, you got to pay for, I mean, it just, and they look for ways so that you're not successful so that they can keep it prolonged and drug out. It's amazing.
So
So there's an exceptional case in Arizona, which I don't know how many other states are like this, but their prison system is for profit. And so
Most of them now, most of them.
right. So each charge, builds upon the last. And so, having a small misdemeanor makes it more likely that there's a more serious misdemeanor and then a felony and then jail time. And they're leasing the individuals who are in jail to for-profit companies. So that was what NAACP was filing about, is that it has created a system of slavery.
Well, and they create that and the fact that, that judge in Texas got I don't know what they did to him. I'm assuming he should have been arrested, but he was taking kickbacks from the penal system and giving people that had very minor crimes serious time. I mean, something that might have been a regular year or less or something like that. He was giving them 4, 5, 6 years, and the people who ran the prisons were giving him kickbacks.
oh yeah, it's the Shawshank Redemption Law. That's what I call it.
Yeah.
But
so
we're almost at that 30-minute mark. So my question to you is, you're still fighting the case. What does it look like for you resolving this moving forward? And then what is the end game here? Because I know you're trying to bring enlightenment to a corrupt situation where you are, and I appreciate you sharing that with us on the show. So yeah. What's the next step for you? Because we want to see you come out smiling like you're doing now.
Right. I don't really know personally how it's going to resolve. I just go day by day doing
have
what
your lawyers giving you do you have a public defender or do you have a lawyer?
Lawyer.
Okay. Has he given you any insight?
Basically, what he's telling me is that there's no way for me to get out of it.
So they want you to plead guilty to the misdemeanor?
In the case, you don't need that. You don't need a lawyer. So don't pay him any more money if that's what he's saying. So
and then the threat is that if I don't agree to plead guilty, that I would go to trial and potentially get jail time, which means more physical abuse from jailers.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Have you went locally to the media there
well, you gotta be careful. All that stuff is tied. I mean, you gotta be careful.
Yeah. So I'm not the only one. Afterward, I found out that this is actually happening daily in that jurisdiction, and that a lot of people are having far more serious harm than what I suffered, and for even lesser things. So, what I had to put a lot of time into thinking, because, I really want to forgive and get to understanding. So understanding the perspective of, the guy who's saying he's going to shoot me, of the police who are beating on me, and what is it that allows us to get past this? And it's coming together through connection. The answer is still connection. That they didn't have bad intent. They're scared. And they're projecting their fear outward and attacking something outside of them rather than dealing with the fear that is inside of them. And so how can we help with that? I would love to invite them to the community gatherings. So my friend Shams Tay has a program called the Sedona Greenhouse Project, which brings together the community to work on planting regenerative no-till food forests that feed the community. And by getting together in these gardens, it brings them together in a circumstance where they start to see who their neighbors are and to build the relationships and connections that are necessary in order to allow us to get past the fear and see each other as human beings. I know that behind the fear of the police when they're beating people, it's the desire to protect somebody else. They think that they're doing something good. To them, they feel like a superhero when they're beating Tyre Nichols to death. And, so getting past this belief that violence is going to help our society, and realizing that understanding others' motives and seeing them as human beings, seeing the love behind even the most violent action, and then bringing forth the full potential of that love and the full potential of the individual. But it takes all of us together. We all ascend or descend together.
Yeah, that's great. And that's a great way to just kind of end the segue because, love does conquer all. But I just feel like we have a big road ahead of us to get there because there's been just so much that has happened. That healing process is is just gonna take a minute on each people's parts. But I commend you immensely for taking this action on and really dealing with it. And I just wish you literally the best in your circumstance and your outcome. But this just is not acceptable, excuse me, from the police standpoint. And I just hope somebody will recognize that something has to be done. I mean, unless, there was literally threat to them, why would you just because you can,
Because you can.
because you
The
can
badge
just
has power.
treat people inhumane and no compassion, no empathy without really understanding what was going on. Because quite frankly, Katie, you could have had mental illness and they didn't know that. And so you were asking for help, but there was something that it triggered in you that was causing an episodic event that needed to be handled in a totally different manner. They didn't know that.
Did they even before we wrap up, did they even take you to get medical treatment? Because you had already acknowledged to them what
the hypothermia.
the
and the whole
hypothermia. You
thing.
didn't even
No,
get
you
medical
didn't.
treatment for this, right?
No,
Yeah.
it's
My hats off to you, with even forgiving them
Yeah.
and allowing yourself to go on. And I pray that your lawyer becomes more of a advocate for you than
Exactly.
to try to
You don't
say
need
there's
somebody
nothing
to
he
just
can
sit
do.
back and allow it to happen. I would be really employ you to
I want you to come back on the show and let us know the outcome of this, and whatever we can do on our end to bring this awareness, we will do that here on the show as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the time to express this. I see it in a Taoist light where I asked for understanding about why there's so much violence in the world. And in the Tao, it says to empty your cup, fill it up. So the cup is being filled with violence until we've had our fill and we
Yes.
decide to try something else because the violence is never going to end violence.
And so you still live in that same area?
Not now, no.
Yeah. I'm like, I think
I was getting ready to say that too. I would be trying to.
I'd be hightailing my ass up out of there. That's what I would.
I would
be
deal
saying.
with that case from a distance.
Absolutely. But I think, I think the fact that somebody just says the prosecutor never does this, never does that, I'd be really looking to
Look for other counsel.
something. Somebody's got to raise the eyebrow on something. And I know that the challenge is when you think about the NAACP getting shot down for what they're trying to put forward, I guess, where do you go? I mean, I think that's the whole key. Where do you go to get the support to really try to do this? But
There's
anyway,
always somebody out there.
it's something, but
The story will touch somebody and say, you know what? That's
enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
And maybe it's creating a bigger story. You are one of many. And so hopefully many people would be willing to come together and do the story. And that's where the TV station can come in to really highlight multiple events of this happening so that some change can take place. Well, we wish you well, Katie, and thank you so much for being a part of our show. Yes.
Thank you for having me.
Yes. This has been another
exciting, informative, educational
edition of the Andre the Beast Crayton show. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's it.
Okay, that's a wrap. Thank you, Katie. Golly, girl, I'm gonna be calling you. I'm like, okay, because now we out there. I'll be ready to fight. I'm just gonna tell you, I'm ready to go get somebody. So we need to figure out. And when I say that, I don't mean with my fist.